A few months ago, in October of 2021, John Tamarian of Curated and I found a car that I had been hunting for years, and it was the worst example of a manual transmission Lamborghini Murcielago LP640 Roadster. Now, I've had 3 of the coupes, but I always wanted one of the Roadsters, but there's only 10 of them in the US, maybe 20 to 25 worldwide. We don't have a firm number on that, and the values have skyrocketed because they are in the company of rare Lamborghinis like Veneno Coupes and Sesto Elementos and manual transmission Murci SVs, SVJ Muras, all of these truly rare and truly special cars, and I get to sit up straight in one. So if it ever popped up, I knew that I wanted this car, and last year this one was traded to a dealer in the Northeast and went through a couple wholesalers, and it was offered to John. And it was not the kind of car that Tamarian would normally want to have it curated. It has 2 accidents on its Carfax and was very, very badly repaired, and it was had a bit of a stigma attached to it, the perfect Ed car. So not the kind of thing he would normally represent to his clients. So he says, "Ed, do you want it?" I said, "Of course I do." And so I was really, really excited about this car. Takes a little bit of time to get the deal done, but finally I get it. And I talked a little bit about the uncertainty as to whether or not I was going to get the car because I was trying to buy a Bugatti Chiron development car and some other things late last year. But when it showed up, honestly, it was even a little bit worse than I had imagined. And I said it was the worst one in terms of its history, and it was certainly the worst one in terms of its condition. There is actually a flood title manual 640 Roadster. It's a car that I sold as a perfect car, the lowest mile and the last one that they built. But unfortunately, it was in a flood in Charleston, 60 days after I sold the car. But that car was fixed perfectly. It is immaculate. It continues to be in a collection of amazing hypercars, a very, very good company, and it is out of reach for me, although I've tried several times. So this was the perfect Ed version of the car, and it shows up. And what had happened with this car is that each time it had been damaged, sometimes reported to Carfax and insurance and things like that, and sometimes not, the guy would just spray paint it. And it was literally like a garage style repair where he would rattle can, just grab a can of Rust-Oleum or whatever brand, because there were several different brands used. And when he needed to paint the fender, he would paint the fender. When somebody dinged the side of it, he would just spray over it. When he cracked the front bumper, spray over it. And it had some divots out of the hood that looked like rock chips, but they were 10 times the normal size, but they weren't deep enough that a rock that size would have caused it, because it would have actually dinged the hood. It was just the paint coming off in chunks because it was so thin and brittle the way the car had been repaired. At one point, somebody rear-ended it. He needed a bumper, or maybe he backed into something, and he put this cheap replica SV bumper on that didn't fit right, didn't fit the lines of the car. He added this very poorly architected and badly fitted ducktail spoiler, kind of like the small SV spoiler, but not. And so there was a lot of stuff, including tint to the taillights and the headlights, and he had tried to make it so much of a Batmobile that he painted everything that should have been gloss black, even on a factory Nero Nemesis matte black car, to matte black. He'd pulled off the hood emblem, he bondoed over the indentation. He had actually just literally painted right over the rear Lamborghini script. So when we pulled that off, there was about a 1/4 inch of paint around it that had just accumulated in the painting. So rather than pull it off, lay it down, dust over it, put it back on, no, just spray paint it. The windscreen frame had tons of texture to it. It's just really, really bad. And so I knew it was a big project, and that's totally fine. I'm not scared of a big reconditioning project with a cool exotic car. I've done it several times, but it can be extremely time consuming. I mean, taking my Verde Draco car into its current form from the form in which I got it took the better part of a year. And I didn't think I was really quite ready for that. And I also noticed that as the cars were becoming so much more valuable, my original vision of painting it orange, my favorite color for an exotic car, really didn't make sense. I mean, the car deserved to be put back to as original as we possibly could. And so the real answer seemed like sending it back to the factory for a proper Pollo Storico restoration. Let them totally redo the car, exterior, interior, go through it mechanically. Although I have to say, it is a wonderful driving car. He hadn't really modified the powertrain at all. The only thing he'd really done was, after he spray painted the wheels matte black, he put on these Toyo tires that were really not great for the diffs. And so after I found a normal set of wheels with a good set of Pirelli tires on them, the car drove infinitely better. We flushed out all the fluids. I mean, the diff fluid was black, almost jello, but it all worked. It all drove well. Honestly, it's a tighter driving car than my much higher mileage coupe. Now that car's got 48,000 miles. This one is the highest mileage US manual LP640 Roadster at about 24,000 miles. Now, So regardless, it was going to be a big project cosmetically. And so after I had my mechanic, Charles Carden at Carden Denton Racing, he used to be our master tech at Lamborghini Atlanta. He's now sort of semi-retired. He works out of his son's race shop, but he's a great Murci mechanic, and he's always my go-to guy as soon as I get one of these cars in, because I never know what's happened over the years as they've set. So he went through the car entirely. Everything was really, really good, and it continued to drive very, very nicely. Not at all reflective of the way the car continued to look. And so then we wanted to figure out, like, how do we cosmetically make this appropriate? I honestly didn't want to go through all the trouble of a Concours level perfect restoration. I just wanted the car to be Cars and Coffee presentable. If I drove it around, I didn't mind driving it with these flared side skirts and extra wing and rear bumper and spray paint marks all over, but it's really not an ed car at that point. I want them to look as stock as possible because I do ultimately care about helping to curate the values of all these cars that I consider to be my favorite cars in the world. And so I was really excited to sort of embark on not a Concours level, but a Cars and Coffee presentable restoration process. Now, Charles had a new-ish set of mirrors that had come off of a car, I guess, under warranty years and years ago. So they were a set of LP640 mirrors in the proper gloss black. And so the goal was then to return everything that was gloss to gloss. Now, he painted it all matte black, and so the windscreen frame needed to be painted, the area behind the glass needed to be repainted, the fuel filler cap, things like that. Now, Charles had a friend who was actually starting a body shop and car reconditioning YouTube channel that offered to help with that. He said, "I'd love to help you paint this in gloss black. I can make it look perfect." It was not going to be nearly as expensive as like a pull the glass proper paint job, but it was going to come out and be at least a 90% outcome. He probably went well beyond that. I think it looks terrific. And so he did all that. We put a set of the proper wheels on that had been painted matte black, curbed up in every degree, and then had the center caps just thrown away. Those had proper Pirelli tires on them, and so that looked really, really good. And I found a OEM Verde Ithaca rear bumper that we could put on the car, and then we would figure out what to do with the paint. Because repainting the whole car, when you're talking about matte, you have to repaint the entire car because you'll never match both the shade of black and the texture. So we thought about just doing a paint protection film. My guys at AP3 Paint Protection, they did that to my roof. My RT12S was a factory matte black painted car, but because it was done in 2009, actually the same model year as this car, it was actually not very even. So like the roof was a little bit blue, the fenders were a little bit gray, it just didn't match. But when we put the matte Expel Stealth PPF all over it, it evened it all out and it looked really, really good. So we thought that might work, but as we experimented on a few panels, we realized, look, this car from a texture perspective and a color perspective is just too off. So the idea became, let's wrap it all matte black. So we took it over to my friends at Wrap Pros in Kennesaw. They've wrapped several of the CarTrek cars, the Bentley, an Audi that's for a new one, and the Gallardo as well. So they have done great work for me in the past, and they were excited to do it. So they wrapped over the green bumper, they wrapped the rest of the car, they puttied over some of the holes that had been drilled to mount the wing and things like that. They actually put some filler over the giant chunks out of the hood, and they got everything really looking OEM Nero Nemesis in a way that would be much more maintainable. Now, eventually, I think we'll probably do the Stealth PPF on top of that just to give it a little bit more depth and make it a little bit easier to maintain and clean as well. But after all of that, honestly, it just came out great. We took out the biometric start button. We took out the biometric safe in the passenger floorboard. We took off the side skirts, and everything just really came together. And now the car looks as it would have, at least from 20 or 30 feet away, when it rolled off the assembly line in Santa Agata in 2009. So I was really, really excited to kind of get the car back, finally back in the garage. After this probably took, I don't know, the better part of 2 months between having it in the different places and shuffling it around, and I had some travel and things like that. Much, much better than a year-long reconditioning process. And again, the car just drives great. It's got an airbag light on, it's got an intermittent check engine light, the tire pressures aren't reporting. Regardless, like, it looks great, it drives great, it passed Georgia emissions, it's legally registered, it's got a title, it's a clean title, still has the bad Carfax, but who the heck cares? Now I can drive it anywhere I want and have a whole lot of fun. And I happened to get the absolutely perfect way to use it for the first time. I got a call from a representative of the local chapter of Make-A-Wish, and they had a kid who qualified for a wish, and his favorite car on earth was an LP640, and he happened to love manual cars. And she asked if I could come out and be a part of the wish. Obviously, I was super excited to do that. Now, the way their insurance works, while they are present, the kid is not allowed to ride with me in the car. After they leave, all bets are off. So they had kind of built an experience around exotic cars, and fortunately, our friends from Extreme Experience were in town last weekend, and they had Atlanta Motorsports Park rented. They had, I don't know, 10 or 12 of their exotic cars there, and so they had arranged for him to get to ride in a Lamborghini, a Ferrari, a Porsche, one of the Hellcats, and have a great experience there. We all went to get some pizza afterwards. His favorite automotive YouTube channel of all is Shmee150. Can't fault him for that. So we got Shmee on a video call with him. Tim is always super gracious with those sorts of things. And so it was an awesome day, and he did get to go for a ride, left hand shifting from the passenger seat in the manual LP640 Roadster. I let him choose between any of the Murcis that he wanted. We could take the SV, we could take the Coupe. He wanted the Roadster. He said it was the perfect car, and I certainly can't fault him for that. It's Car Trek time again. This week we're releasing our 8th Car Trek series on Freddie's channel thanks to Auto Tempest's continued support. Auto Tempest is honestly where I start most of my days looking for the next car to fill a vacant spot in the garage, or not a vacant spot in the garage just because I'm always looking anyway. But it is the most powerful tool to shop for your next car. They allow you to search all the major listing sites at the same time, even Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist on a national level, which you can't do on their own site. So it's a super cool thing, and they've been an amazing supporter of VINwiki over the years. So please, right now, check them out at the link in the description below to thank them for their support of Car Trek, VINwiki, so that we can keep having this much fun.